Yo guys, TheCuriousBrit back once again, and today we're reacting to a fan favourite channel, Not Just Bikes. We're reacting to a video called A Bike Lanes You Can't See. Ontvlechten, I think it's pronounced. So without further ado, let's get straight into this one.
If you're familiar at all with bicycle infrastructure, then you're familiar with separated bicycle paths. In most cities, these are considered the gold standard for bicycle infrastructure, and with good reason. In general, if you want to keep people on bicycles safe from 2-ton death machines, you want to physically separate them, and not put them in a painted bicycle gutter. But what's also great is when you can cycle to wherever you're going, and almost never encounter a car at all. It might not look like it, but this is bicycle infrastructure. And so is this. And this. What you're seeing here, or rather not seeing, is the Dutch concept of Ontvlechten, which in this context...
Ontvlechten is how you pronounce it. Ontvlechten. Interesting.
...context means disentangling. I'll explain how that works, but first we need to understand how most other cities do things. In a typical city, there will be roads and everybody will use them. Everybody will take the same route, regardless of what vehicle they're using. And if this route gets too jammed up, then people will just cut through this neighborhood over here. This free-for-all strongly encourages driving, which generates insane amounts of car traffic and ultimately leads to busy, congested streets that are highly unpleasant to be around. The suburban cul-de-sac neighborhood acknowledges this problem and solves it by making driving routes so circuitous and convoluted that nobody but residents will be able to figure them out. Unfortunately, it does this for everyone, so distances become completely impractical to walk or cycle, which encourages even more driving, traffic, and car dependency. Here is an example from the subreddit Suburban Hell. These two houses in Florida share a backyard, but it would take over 2 hours to walk between them. The Dutch take a very different approach. There are many different types of roads, but not all routes are accessible by car. This isn't done randomly or just when residents complain. Rather, there is a conscious effort to separate or disentangle these routes taken by car drivers from those taken by everyone else. In effect, designing completely different road networks for different types of traffic.
These are called
hoofdnetten, or main networks, and most Dutch cities have them. For example, here is the hoofdnet plan for 's-Hertogenbosch. And here's the plan for Amsterdam. The Amsterdam plan goes a step further by designating parts of the network as plusnetten, which specify which form of traffic gets the highest priority along the route, including things like traffic signal timing. And when a street is redesigned, the plusnet will define the priority of how the space is allocated. For example, this street in Amsterdam is part of both the bicycle and tram plusnets, so one lane of cars has been removed completely to give more room for cyclists and to give trams their own lane. If you want to learn more about the distinction between plusnetten and hoofdnetten, the city has published a thrilling 80-page document describing the plan that I'll link to in the description. It's a real page-turner. But ultimately, they are both part of the same thing, different networks for different types of traffic. Amsterdam has hoofdnetten for cars, bicycles, public transportation, and walking. The implications of this are really interesting. Here's an example of a street in the car network during rush hour. And here's an example of the street in the bicycle network just around the corner. It's clear from the volumes of traffic which form of transportation is being favored here. Bicycle networks also incorporate bicycle-only roads wherever possible, sometimes separated from the car network by underpasses, removing the requirement for a stoplight completely.
It's just so much
more convenient. It's also common for the network for walking and cycling to purposefully cross through city parks, making it even more pleasant to walk and cycle through the city. These routes are enforced in many different ways. Sometimes it's with signs, and sometimes it's with physical barriers. This is not a new concept. Even the Romans did it to keep carriage traffic out of certain areas. Urban planners call this filtered permeability. But the important thing to note here is that this is not being done haphazardly. It's specifically done to encourage traffic along a network. For example, here is a street with filtered permeability in our old neighborhood in Toronto that lets pedestrians and cyclists through, but not drivers. But this only happened after years of residents fighting with traffic engineers. Here in the Netherlands, filtered permeability is built in everywhere and specifically designed to encourage different types of traffic along designated routes. This often allows cyclists and public transportation users to take the fastest and most direct route to where they are going, while car traffic is allowed only for local destinations. For example, here's how I cycle to a meeting in Nord, and here's how I drive there. Here's how I cycle to a friend's house, and here's how I drive there. Here's how I cycle to IKEA, and here's how I drive there. You might think that this situation is bad for car drivers, but ultimately it's not. If there were a direct route to drive everywhere, then most of these people on bicycles and trams would be driving too, and the street would be so congested that it would take ages to drive anywhere. In fact, that was the situation here in Amsterdam in the 1970s. The city was so clogged with cars that the streets were not only highly inefficient, but also extremely dangerous, which is the current situation in most American and Canadian cities today. When I drive in Amsterdam, I'm amazed how little car traffic I encounter for a city of this size. It's also important to note that these
really
hoofdnetten
clever,
and plusnetten
isn't
are
it?
not
Like,
made as a replacement to proper
it's
bike.
really clever, the infrastructure they've got in place and the road network and like the cycle networks and stuff. Wow, just if every country took a leaf from this book and like just implemented some more of this in their planning and designs and stuff, it just be so much easier and faster to get around places.
Bicycle infrastructure, but rather in addition to it. For example, the London Quiet Ways cycling plan was used to put cyclists on quiet streets, but it was usually done to avoid having to build proper cycling infrastructure on major roads, and often prevented cyclists from taking the most direct route to their destinations. In the Netherlands, most busy streets will still have separated bicycle path, even on routes designed for cars, unless the street is very old and hasn't been redesigned in the last 30 or 40 years. I was absolutely amazed when I discovered these maps because it totally changed the way I looked at cycling in cities in the Netherlands. These routes mean that cycling in Dutch cities can be very relaxing and extremely safe, even on streets that look like they have no bicycle infrastructure, because you can ride through the streets of a bicycle hoofdnet and hardly ever cross paths with a car at all. And it's all thanks to the invisible bicycle infrastructure that Dutch planners use to ensure that their streets are as pleasant and efficient as possible. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my supporters on Patreon who pay me to read 80-page documents from the gemeente. If you'd like to support...
Wow, so that was rather interesting, to be honest with you. Woof. What were they called again? What's it called again? Yeah, them. Anyway, it really seemed like a really useful piece of infrastructure that Amsterdam have going on there for their networks of pedestrian safety, cyclist safety, the road safety. So it seems to be working there. So more towns and cities need to implement them sort of features in their own towns and cities infrastructure, as I think it'd be really beneficial. I can speak from the likes of London, capital of England. I've been there for a few times myself, and yeah, they could do with more cycling infrastructure, because I've been on them Boris bikes once or twice, and there's not the best cycling infrastructure. There's bits there, but not up to the standard that Amsterdam have there. Wow. But anyway, if you've liked what you've seen, don't forget to smash that thumbs up. It really does help out the channel. Also, hit the subscribe button down below. That helps me out loads too. If there's anything you want me to react to in the future, comment down below. Until next time, I've been TheCuriousBrit. Take care and stay safe, guys. Peace out.